Ted Brightwell still remembers the first time he went to the Grand Palace. This was back in 1973, and the Palace was one of the few gay bars in Charleston, West Virginia.
Now, I was not very pretty then. I had on white fur hot pants, a black turtleneck sparkly sweater, a wig that just kind of sat on my head, and blue glitter eyeshadow, but I did have good shoes, and I could walk in them.
Ted was a theater geek, and he and some of his friends had gotten dressed up for fun, and they decided to strut their stuff at the bar.
But we walked in, and the first drag queen I saw there was a queen that looked just like Cher. And I was like, okay, I need to improve on some things. And I did. And, 40 years later, I'm known across the country.
In 1995, Ted was Miss Gay World.
Anywhere I go, I get booked because I do Barbra Streisand, so it's just helped me become pretty well known.
He does Cher, too. A fan posted this video on YouTube showing Ted lip-syncing to a Cher tune. Guys in the crowd are holding up dollar bills and shouting as Ted struts around. He absolutely nails Cher's movements, her singing poses and signature hair toss, even the licking of her lips. It's freaky how much he looks like her. Ted's come a long way since the first night he walked into the Grand Palace.
I knew what I was, but I had never been to a gay bar. So the first time I walked into the Grand Palace and saw men dancing together and had drinks bought for me because I was young and pretty then. And, at that point in time, it was an epiphany. It hit me in the face. This is who you are, Ted. This is who you are. Don't hide it anymore. And I didn't.
From PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting, this is Us and Them. It's the podcast where we tell stories from America's cultural divides. I'm Trey Kay. Here's why I wanted to hear Ted's story. I grew up in Charleston, West Virginia, where Ted lives. I knew him back when I was in high school because he dressed the hair for a community theater production that I was in, My Fair Lady. And I don't get how someone like Ted could be from a place like this. I saw a Pew survey the other day that said that more than half of the people in West Virginia believe that the Bible is the Word of God and should be taken literally. And the same survey says that 61% of people in West Virginia think homosexuality should be discouraged.
There is good and there is evil and there is sin, and these are people who are choosing a behavior.
People like my friend Alice Moore haven't changed at all.
This kind of attraction and behavior was a practice of sodomy.
But there's been a sweeping cultural change regarding gay rights in America. A Pew Research poll taken back in 2001 showed that a majority of Americans opposed same-sex marriage. Their 2017 poll indicated that a majority of Americans, 62%, supported same-sex marriage. That's the highest approval rating since they've polled this issue. When we first produced this episode back in 2015, I had seen things change for gay and lesbian people where I live in New York. But I wasn't sure how things had changed in red state America. And that's why I wanted to go home where I grew up in West Virginia and talk to people. I wanted to know what it's like to be gay there today. And I wondered what it's like to be wary of all this change and see it happening all around you. So I went back home and I talked to old friends. And I went to church.
And Christians aren't upset about this. So there's no outrage over homosexuality. It's accepted today.
It wasn't accepted back when I was in high school. Contempt for gay people was just part of the landscape back then. My high school buddies and I used to drive by that bar that Ted mentioned, the Grand Palace, the gay bar, and we'd yell, "Faggot!" out the car window. Most of my friends didn't know it, but I went to that bar once. It was back in 1979, I was 17, and I was in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar. One night after rehearsal, some of the women in the cast wanted to go dancing at the Palace. My buddies said, no way. One of them said, that's the fag bar. But the women said the Palace had the best dance floor in town. It lights up like in Saturday Night Fever. So we reluctantly followed them into what we imagined to be our town's very own Sodom and Gomorrah. When we got inside, the women we were chasing were already out on the dance floor. The rest of the clientele were mostly men, jumping, twirling, and grinding their hips into one another. I tried not to stare. I was expecting effeminate, girly men, but there were more than a few dudes who without a doubt could kick my ass. There were tough-looking guys decked out in leather, chains, and studs like the biker dude and the Village People. I slipped off to the men's room. It was packed. The guy in the next urinal was a blonde bombshell in drag. He looked just like Marilyn Monroe. I kept asking myself, why is he doing this? Who'd have the balls to dress in drag in the middle of redneck Appalachia in the 1970s? More than 30 years later, I still wondered. And I asked Ted why he did it.
I came out with a vengeance. So therefore, this is my home. This is where I live. This is where I'm going to practice my profession. And as a young idealist, I felt that, I can be defensive about that a little bit. And I'm going to say, I'm going to fight for my rights. And I felt very strongly about that. And maybe I might sometimes, as you're young and idealistic, you might take things to an extreme. I mean, yes, there were times when I was flamboyantly walking down the street. Look at me, I'm just a big old homo. But at the same time, in my mind, as a young person, I'm thinking, okay, they're looking at me and they can make fun of me. I don't care. But I'm still here and I'm not leaving. So you got to get used to it.
Ted's not from West Virginia. His parents are, but his dad was in the military and they moved around a lot. Ted came here to go to college, and he's done well since then. When he and I met for a walk around town recently, I met him in front of his hair salon, the Visions Day Spa. The spa sits on picturesque tree-lined Capitol Street, right in the heart of Charleston. It's surrounded by a hip bookstore, boutique lawyer offices, and a gourmet ice cream parlor. But doing hair wasn't Ted's career plan when he came to Charleston to go to college.
At the time, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and then decided that I wasn't really cut out to be a teacher. And at that time, I kind of discovered who and what I was, and I kind of thought being gay in the school system was probably not the best idea.
When Ted did his student teaching, it didn't go well.
Just walking down the halls, like at a high school, I would hear, can I say fag? Mm-hmm. Okay. I would hear, faggot. And I'm thinking, am I that obvious? Which I probably was. But at the same time, so I thought, do I want to subject myself to that every day in a career?
Ted became a hairdresser instead. It seemed like an acceptable job for a gay man. I think it must have been awful to be harassed so much that you change careers. But Ted says he loves being a hairdresser, and he downplays how badly some people have treated him.
I can't say that I had any kind of hard time coming out by any means. I never felt threatened or in fear of my life walking down the street, and I was pretty out. We used to wear our fake fur coats and have just a tiny little bit of makeup on, carry our man bag in 1974, which you just didn't do. And I had to endure, people talking about us and saying things and this, that, and the other. But I never felt threatened. But I was discriminated against.
Ted says he was fired from a bartending job because he was gay, and he was kicked out of 2 apartments.
The landlords would come up and say, I don't want your kind here.
What would they say?
Exactly that. I don't want your kind here. So you have to move.
And it was clear your kind meant a homosexual.
Yes, absolutely. And at that time, I was young, and I won't say totally naive, but it hurt my feelings. It really, it devastated me. And I found, I was working at the time as a bartender, and one of the guys, his father lived across the street from this apartment, and he said, I can find you this apartment. The guy's pretty cool. And I lived in that basement apartment for years because I did not want to subject myself to that again. Even though I was doing much better, I lived in this dump, and finally my friends had to convince me to move out.
Where are we walking to now? Tell us.
We are walking to what used to be the Grand Palace, which the building is no longer there.
So we arrive at the place where the palace once stood, right next to the I-64 on-ramp. And I need to get something off my chest.
Okay.
So I'm confessing that, in those years when I was a teenager, you're out with your buddies and you're hot rodding around and whatnot. And I remember we would drive up this ramp and we would shout over the rail at the Grand Palace, "Faggot!" And I'm kind of embarrassed about that.
Did you throw eggs?
No, I didn't throw eggs.
Did you throw beer bottles?
I didn't do that.
Okay, well, but people did throw eggs and throw beer bottles. Now, I can't say that I know anybody that ever got seriously injured from that. Of course, that is dangerous. But I can remember one time myself coming through there, and all of a sudden we were walking by the wall, and we hear this splat, followed by "faggot." And it's like, oh, shit, girl, they're throwing eggs at us, run. And, of course, we were in drag, so it's like, they can't hit us with an egg. That'll mess up this makeup I spent 2 hours on.
I never threw eggs, but I'm ashamed of what I did do. I'd like to think that in the 30 years since then, I've grown up, and I kind of feel like the rest of us have too. Today, Charleston has a gay pride parade. Men in drag march down the street, and people don't throw bottles. They line up and cheer, kind of like they do for the annual Shriners Parade. Today, gay people can get married in West Virginia, and Ted thinks that maybe one reason that's true is that guys like him were so out so early in the battle.
I like to think I helped, at least in this area. I tell the young kids all the time when they talk to me. I'm 60 years old now, so the 21-year-olds that I talk to, we'll talk about things. And I said, honey, you couldn't walk down the street holding your boyfriend's hand if it hadn't been for me, So just respect me, damn it.
Since we first posted this episode, some things have changed for Ted. He closed down the Visions Day Spa, but now sees his clients at a place called Spa Bliss. But some things never change. On most weekend nights, you can see Ted, or Miss Vicky Williams as he's known, at a drag bar called The Broadway. If you'd like to see photos and videos of Ted, go to usandthempodcast.com.
It's a tragic story in my view, my vision here. This is a sad story.
Things have really changed, and West Virginia has become a more tolerant place. But some people haven't changed, and they probably won't ever soften their stand on homosexuality.
Note that I am shaking my head in disapproval, but go ahead with your story.
Remember my friend Alice Moore? She is a conservative, God-fearing Christian who used to be on the school board of our county when I was a kid. Alice and I have a friendship that strikes some people as odd. She believes that the Bible is the revealed Word of God, and I don't. But even though we disagree on so many things, she gives me insight into a way of thinking that's foreign to many of my blue state friends. And I think it's a perspective that we need to hear. And besides, I just like Alice.
Hi. Good to see you. How you doing?
Hi.
Alice lives in Tennessee now. I went to see her recently, and I told her that I was going to do a podcast that talked about my visit to a gay bar back when I was a teenager. I literally thought that this was the Sodom and Gomorrah of Charleston. I mean, I thought going in there. What did you say?
I said it was.
It was what?
The Sodom and Gomorrah of Charleston.
How do you know that?
Well, that's where the name Sodom comes from sodomy, and from this kind of attraction and behavior and people behaving in this way that was a practice of sodomy. I mean, if they were practicing that, they're practicing sodomy. So that was I'd say that would be the Sodom and Gomorrah of Charleston. That's a good way to put it. And it's a tragic story in my view, my vision here. This is a sad story. But
Why?
oh, Trey, there is good and there is evil and there is sin, and these are people who are choosing a behavior. I mean, they are basically their own God. So, I've told you before, if there is no God, there is no right and wrong. There is no morality. There is just my opinion and your opinion, and maybe the opinion of the state, which is going to be more powerful than both of us and can force its morality on us both. If there is no God, there is nothing that you can say is wrong, evil, or good.
But here I am.
So, and you're saying this is the Sodom and Gomorrah of Charleston. I said, yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah of Charleston. If that's the kind of place it was, and that's the kind of people it was attracting, then, yeah, that was not a good place for you to be.
Back in the 70s, when Alice was a school board member, our county was planning to adopt some multicultural textbooks. Alice objected to the books. She believed liberals were trying to use schools to transform society. One thing they wanted was to force people to become more accepting of homosexuals.
So we're going to tell these little children, now, what is homosexuality? Well, if you're a boy and you like boys better than you do girls, then you may be a homosexual. Or if you're a girl and you like girls better than you do boys, you may be a lesbian. And we're going to start that with kindergarten children. We're going to introduce them to this little girl who has two mommies or two daddies. It is evil. It is sin. It is the doctrine of secular humanism. It is the religion of the public schools that the government endorses and allows and encourages and requires in many cases. And that is what we replaced the doctrine of Christ with. And we take these little children and confuse them about things they've never heard of in their lives.
How should we talk about these people? I mean,
I don't know that we need to be talking about these people. When I talk about them, I talk about the sin of behavior. I talk about God's laws and the disobedience to God, and which he that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. And so I talk about sin.
The reason I like to check in with Alice on this is because views like hers informed my early views on gay people. The idea that homosexuality is an abomination against God was something that pervaded the culture that I grew up in. And people in West Virginia and other Appalachian states are still struggling with this. In West Virginia, gay men and lesbians can still face vicious discrimination sometimes. When we first produced this episode back in 2015, my West Virginia Public Broadcasting colleague, Roxy Todd, reported a story that intrigued me, and I asked her to come onto the podcast to tell us about that. Hey, Roxy, thanks so much for coming in and doing this.
Thanks, Trey. I'm glad to be here.
So I want to hear a little bit about Sam Williams. He was a coal miner a few years back. What happened to him?
Well, Sam Williams was working for Massey Energy, and he really enjoyed being a coal miner. He had a lot of really close friends that were coal miners with him. And at some point, his friends found out that he was gay, and they started harassing him at work. He kept working at Massey Energy for about 5 years, and eventually he quit because the harassment became so brutal.
So you visited him recently? Where's he living now?
Sam lives with his husband, Burley, about a half an hour outside of Charleston. They have a little townhome, and I visited with them when they were making dinner. Sam Williams has two dogs, Bella and this chubby little bulldog, Lacey.
Give Day 11. Yes, you days, girl. You days, love bug.
So, Roxy, how was it that Sam Williams came out to his coworkers?
Well, he didn't come out. They actually found out about it.
They just took it upon themselves to watch, follow, see me come out of a bar, automatically stereotype me. I faced a lot of things in the mines. I've been told that they hope all faggots die. There's a fine line from somebody saying that they're joking and then looking you in the eye and saying it and knowing that that's what they meant. But when it's your supervisors, it's a whole different ballgame.
So the coworkers found out he was gay. What happened next?
Well, the harassment at work escalated, and his coworkers even would follow Sam out to his car, and his coworkers even would show up at night, bang on his door. And Sam and his husband Burley, they installed this heavy-duty security system, which is still there. I saw it, and it alerts them whenever someone walks through the front or the back door. And they became so threatened that Burley even bought himself his first gun.
It was nerve-wracking.
This is Burley.
And they messed with his vehicle, like scratched and quit fag, took the wheel weights off his tires. I never knew when he was coming home, and when he didn't come home, I had to go out and go to mines and search for him. I'm thinking someone shot him on the side of the road.
That sounds horrible. So I understand that Sam Williams quit and he sued Massey Energy. But I'm interested to know how he was able to sue Massey. I mean, because you say in your report that in West Virginia, laws against discrimination don't cover sexual orientation. I mean, it's legal to fire somebody or harass somebody who's gay. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. It is legal at this time to discriminate against somebody just because they're gay in West Virginia. The way it worked is that Sam's lawyer sued Massey Energy for sexual harassment at work, and they settled out of court because Massey Energy was actually bought out by Alpha Natural Resources, and that company decided they wanted to settle this case and kind of get it off their plate. So it is still possible at this time in West Virginia for people to be fired, but there are activists who are trying to work to change that law at the state level.
And I understand that you've talked to folks in one activist group, Fairness West Virginia. Let's hear a little bit of the conversation you had with Andrew Schneider from Fairness West Virginia.
It's particularly, I think, risky now that we have marriage equality because you can get married on Sunday and then fired on Monday. Marriage, in some ways, makes our relationships in the gay community more visible. And so you are more prone to have the picture of your loved one on your desk. You want to talk with coworkers about what you did with your family over the weekend.
Oh, that's interesting. So we're in a weird transition phase where it's becoming more socially acceptable, but at the same time, it's almost like people in the LGBT community are more vulnerable to discrimination.
And in some ways, it wasn't expected. We never expected we would get marriage before we got non-discrimination.
So one thing that got you interested in going back and checking with Sam Williams is that there's a new song about him. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, there's a singer-songwriter who lives in Kentucky, and his name is Sam Gleaves. They're both Sams, so it gets a little complicated talking about them. But Sam Gleaves, he's born and raised in southwestern Virginia. He's trained as an old-time musician. He's 22 years old. He's young. And this is the first album that he's been doing with songs that he's written himself. And the title song, the new album, he played for me on the banjo in his home. It's called Ain't We Brothers?
I was born here just the same as you. Another time, another day. I'm sure the good Lord took his time, made each of us just this way.
So you talked to songwriter Sam Gleaves, and what did he tell you about why he wanted to write about the experience of Sam Williams?
Well, he heard about this story of Sam Williams being discriminated against in the coal mines, and he thought that this was a really interesting story about somebody who had a lot of courage. Even though he didn't come out on purpose, Sam Williams really started taking an active role and speaking out against what happened to him in the mines. And Sam Gleaves was really impressed.
I was thinking about what it means to be a man in our home region in central Appalachia. You know, a lot of people would say there's kind of a narrow definition of what it means to be a man here. Tell me I'm not man enough to set foot in that mine. Go on and tell me that once more to my face this time. And I was thinking, you know, he's more of a man. He's brave. He's taking a stand for who he is, and he's not going to put up with this abuse, and he's honest. You know, that's That's what makes him a man.
So Sam Gleaves is gay himself, and he's making music in a kind of a traditional world in rural Appalachia. Is that one reason he was drawn to this story? And has he faced discrimination like Sam Williams has?
Sam Gleaves told me he never has faced the kind of discrimination that Sam Williams has experienced. And he did mention that some of his mentors in the music community are gay themselves and open, and that is changing in the old-time music community. But that said, he does have some older musicians that he knows and he's learned under, and he knows that he has held off being open with them. But for the most part, Sam Gleaves does say that he's able to be open with his own sexuality.
Maybe the popular perception is that everyone that's gay in Central Appalachia is in hiding because they're afraid of, religious repercussions or being shunned by their community for whatever reason. And that's not true. I think there's a subtlety about Appalachian culture and about the way we communicate sometimes where a lot of things go unspoken, but they might be communicated in other ways, like acceptance for gay folks in a lot of their families might mean that they don't name their partner, at family gatherings, but that person is welcome anyway.
So the song about the miner that he wrote, has the miner heard it, Sam Williams?
Yes, he heard it and he loves it.
That is a powerful song, and it was so I loved it because when it comes on there and he says, I come home to my man or my husband or.
You never know. I think I got a man waiting on me at home or something.
Yes.
First things first, I'm a blue-collar man with scars on my knuckles, dust on my hands. Probably wouldn't have ever known I've got a man waiting on me at home.
That relates to me so much because I know that Burley was waiting for me at home. He would wait up for me until we got in, and then he'd have dinner waiting on me, even though if I'd got in at 3 o'clock in the morning,
So what does Sam Williams do now that he's not a miner anymore?
Now Sam Williams is a manager at a local Dollar General, but he did tell me that he still misses the work that he did in the coal mines.
I do miss running good coal. I miss, being top dogs on the coal crew and before things started getting more violent. If there was a perfect world out there, I'd love to be I'd love to be a coal miner again, but it'll never happen again, more than likely. But it was fun.
To tell you the truth, I don't want to fight. Just want to say one thing outright to you. Ain't we flesh and blood all through? And ain't we brothers too?
That's musician Sam Gleaves singing a song inspired by the story of miner Sam Williams. Roxy, thanks so much for bringing this story to us.
Thank you, Trey.
Roxy Todd is a reporter for West Virginia Public Broadcasting and a producer for their program Inside Appalachia. Songwriter Sam Gleaves' debut album, Ain't We Brothers, has been a critical success and gotten a lot of well-deserved attention. To learn more about it, visit our website at usandthempodcast.com. And there's an update on Sam and Burley Williams. They decided to leave West Virginia, and they moved to Florida. And the laws in West Virginia still don't explicitly prohibit discrimination against people because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. In 2017, the West Virginia Supreme Court ruled that the state's hate crime law does not extend to sexual orientation. The president of West Virginia's ACLU chapter told me that in the wake of that decision, his group is pushing hard for legislation to expand laws against discrimination to include sexual orientation and gender identity. Coming up, we'll hear from the first same-sex couple to be married in West Virginia. Sarah Atkins and Casey McGee.
I didn't do it to be the first. It was really cool that we were the first, but we did it because we wanted to be married.
I'm Trey Kay, and this is Us and Them, which is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council, the CRC Foundation, and the Daywood Foundation.
In difficult times, music gives us peace, brings us together, and helps heal us. It calms our nerves and brightens our days. That's why we're bringing you classic episodes of Mountain Stage on air and in our podcast. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find something that's familiar or brand new and feel the power of live music on our website, mountainstage.org.
Sam and Burley Williams got married back in 2010. They had their wedding in Washington, D.C. because same-sex marriage wasn't legal in West Virginia. But things have changed.
First tonight, we begin with a breaking news alert out of West Virginia, where same-sex couples are now allowed to marry.
West Virginia used to ban gay marriage, but the law was struck down in court. In the fall of 2014, the United States Supreme Court refused to hear appeals of cases like that. So, West Virginia joined a growing number of states that legally recognize the marriages of same-sex couples.
This comes after Attorney General Patrick Morrisey said his office would no longer fight a court challenge to the state's ban on same-sex marriage.
We did everything in our power. We litigated this case. We had intervened. And while I'm disappointed with the Supreme Court's decision, because I really think it takes power away from the states and from the local folks, at the end of the day, as the Attorney General, I have to respect Supreme Court decisions and precedents, whether you like it or not.
This whole thing happened before many West Virginians could get their mind around the idea. The Sunday after the law change, I went to the Church of the Nazarene in Nitro, West Virginia.
And I just want to say this morning, I'm not going to preach a message on homosexuality this morning, but I do want to tell you that I'm utterly disappointed in our governor. I'm utterly disappointed in our Attorney General, and I'm disappointed in the Supreme Court. So I believe that we are a nation that's turning away from God, and our nation desperately needs prayer. Make Sarah feel
And Preacher David Clark says he's disappointed that more preachers aren't speaking out about this brave new world of homosexuals marrying in West by God, Virginia.
And Christians aren't upset about this. So there's no outrage over homosexuality. It's accepted today. There's no outrage over adultery. There's no outrage over sex out of wedlock. There's no outrage over teen pregnancy. There's no outrage over lying, cheating, or stealing. No outrage. But the only sins that bring outrage today are pedophilia. Society doesn't accept.
While Preacher Clark was struggling to wrap his mind around the notion of gay marriage, the first same-sex couples to get hitched were also having trouble getting used to the idea.
Casey McGee, do you take Sarah Atkins to be your lawfully wedded spouse, to have the hold from sickness and health until death do you part?
I do, but where are our rings?
That's Casey McGee at her wedding to Sarah Atkins. They were the first same-sex couple to marry in West Virginia, and they were the plaintiffs in a lawsuit to force change in the state's marriage law.
I got the phone call about 2:45 saying you need to go to the courthouse. At roughly 2:46, Sarah texted her friend Aaron, who is the guy who performed the ceremony.
He's a licensed minister here in West Virginia.
But he was in class. So she texted him, and he got up and left class in the middle of class, and he beat us to the courthouse. We went home, picked up all of our paperwork because, you need the birth certificates and stuff. Our rings arrived in the mail yesterday. So they were waiting for us when we got home.
So that's kind of serendipitous, right?
Right. Unfortunately, they were too big, but, we do the best we can. We left the house. While we were driving, I was calling friends saying, this is what's going on. We're headed to the courthouse. Do you want to be there? Can you make it? And those who could did. And the media beat us to the courthouse. So we walked into a panel of cameras and lights.
That's all right. Now, you guys have been a couple for how long?
Just about 5 years.
All right, and you've been thinking about getting married for how long?
Just about 5 years.
Just about 5 years. And you all have been fighting for this for a while. So what does this mean for you, having fought for this for so long?
It's obviously it's a huge win. It's a legal win, but for us, it's just. I mean, we've been a family for a long time, and it's just nice to be able to finally have that legal protection to go with our actual family.
Alrighty, by the power invested in me by the state of West Virginia, I now pronounce you lawfully wed.
We did it! We did it!
Part of me is, really proud because it's a big deal for other people, and I've gotten a lot of, thank yous and congratulations, and but I didn't do it to be the first. It was really cool that we were the first, but we did it because we wanted to be married, and we have been waiting, and we were part of the fight to get the right to be married. So we just wanted to do it as soon as possible, and also we said we need to get there before they change their minds.
Knowing that we are united in a now legal way, that takes some of the uncertainty out of life situations, I don't have to worry about if Casey has to go to the hospital. Are they going to let me back to see her? Are they going to recognize that we're in a relationship? Or are they going to treat me like the legal strangers that we were before 4:15 yesterday?
Do you guys feel changed? Do you feel any different?
I don't know if I felt changed. But like I said, I'm not entirely certain that everything has sunk in yet. I stopped sometimes. Actually, today it's 4 or 5 times I've just stopped and said, "We got married."
Mm-hmm. I have a wife. It's amazing.
And we
and
stopped
that word
and
means something now.
Yeah, we stopped and looked at each other and we're like, "Wife," and it's a word that we haven't really been able to use before.
And it's a word that everybody understands what it means, and
yeah, calling somebody your partner just doesn't have the right feel to it.
The partner, the significant other, the girlfriend, which sounds so juvenile. For people who have been together for 5 years and own a house together, and it's silly, but wife is nice. I'm digging it.
That's Casey McGee and Sarah Adkins McGee, the first same-sex couple to be legally married in West Virginia. When I was with them, they were absolutely beaming. It's truly amazing how quickly our nation has changed course on same-sex marriage. I mean, back in 2004, gay marriage was a wedge issue that motivated conservative voters to re-elect George W. Bush. When we first produced this episode, marriage was legal in some but not all states. Since then, the Supreme Court has made same-sex marriage the law of the land. There are still some battles to be fought over equality and acceptance, but there's no question about the enormous transformation our nation has made. And I've changed with our country over my lifetime. From shouting faggots while speeding by the Grand Palace, to posing for pictures with just married lesbians. I don't know this for sure, but I imagine that my change of heart is a journey that many Americans might have made over the years. For a long time, we treated gay people as a them and hoped that they'd keep their lives closeted or on the margins in bars like the Grand Palace, hidden away on the dark side of town. But little by little, it seems like Americans are consciously bringing gay people, our neighbors, colleagues, friends, and family, onto Main Street, no longer a them, but rather part of us. You've been listening to Us and Them. For this show, our team was me, Trey Kay, Catherine Winter, Chris Julin, and Mitch Hanley. Michael Lipton and Tristan Lozow wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. The wonderful people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the West Virginia Humanities Council, the the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the CRC Foundation, and the Daywood Foundation. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
From PRX.